Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name is Stuart McDonald. I'm the Director of Systems Engineering here at LabKey. I'm here today to talk about how LabKey Cloud can help you and your organization reduce its IT burden. While our focus today is on the features and benefits of LabKey Cloud and its services, there are still a few things that clients can take away for use on-premise or in their own private cloud deployments. So during our session today, we will do a deep dive into what is LabKey Cloud. We'll cover our LabKey Cloud infrastructure and design. We'll talk about its managed services and review the security and compliance features. We'll wrap up by taking a brief look at our service tiers, and we'll leave time for your questions. So let's get started. So clients have told us that installing and keeping LabKey up to date is challenging. So we designed and built a software as a service solution that combines the skill and knowledge of running applications in the cloud with the expertise and best practices of installing and running LabKey. We offer a fully managed service where we take the burden off you and your organization for running LabKey. This allows you and your organization to focus on the science of your research, and so you can get back to changing the world. Some of the key components of the LabKey Cloud solution is using LabKey Cloud and our cloud components. We've taken and built our expertise by providing automated deployments of LabKey applications. It's a customized cloud solution specifically designed to run LabKey applications for optimal performance. It's a fully managed solution, as I mentioned before, that handles all aspects of securing, deploying, managing, and updating LabKey applications. We take the guesswork of how to optimally deploy LabKey applications and keep them secure. And this ultimately reduces the IT burden in your organization. So let's talk briefly about the concept of shared responsibility. Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I really like this slide because I think it really helps explain how LabKey Cloud helps unburden clients from the complexities of running an application in the cloud. With LabKey Cloud, we're responsible for the majority of the areas in blue, allowing clients to focus only on the areas that are as important to them, such as identity and access management and controlling access and their data. So as a participant in the cloud, and we run our services on AWS, we benefit from all the advantages of the cloud provider. So this slide shows that AWS is responsible for a good majority of infrastructure. LabKey takes on additional aspects of running applications in the cloud. And then the client is really only responsible for just a few things, such as securing the application by determining who has access to the system and the data associated with it. So as I mentioned, the power of LabKey Cloud is in our cloud provider advantage. Because we run on Amazon Web Services, you gain the benefits of these cloud provider advantages. Some of those include cost savings. So there's no capital outlay for you, and your organization doesn't need to spend money on server equipment for running LabKey applications. Instead, you pay for what you use rather than what you think you might need, which you typically have to do if you're planning to deploy an infrastructure in your own data center. You need to determine what your needs are for the next 3 years and then acquire that hardware and deploy it. You gain the strategic capabilities of the cloud. By this, I mean there are a wide range of services available to you that are just inherent as part of the cloud. That's a strategic advantage because you don't have to invest in those capabilities before you reap the benefits of them. So for example, one of the most challenging things of running applications securely today is encryption. To deploy encryption in your own data center is a very expensive solution that requires you to invest in either hardware and software in order to meet those requirements. The cloud just gives you that as part of the functionality that's there, and that's a strategic advantage for you. Reliability and availability. Because cloud providers have a large customer base, they can carry the high costs and burden for building and maintaining multiple data centers in multiple geographic regions. If you contrast that to what you have to do if you're running something on your own on-premise solution, you have to have a substantial investment in at least one data center and more than likely more than one data center, so you can provide redundancy and recovery capabilities. That's very, very expensive to do. And lastly, one of the other advantages of choosing a cloud provider is that you can inherit some of the compliance certifications that come as part of the cloud provider. So for example, one of the aspects of running and compliance aspects of things is running a data center with a SOC 2 certification. There are no less than 64 requirements to achieve a SOC 2 certification for your data center. And because we run in AWS, AWS is responsible for all of the data center aspects of things. And so they can pass on their SOC 2 certification to us and allow us to inherit those. So when we built LabKey Cloud, we used 3 key principles: design, defense, and automation. So we started with a tiered application design that separates the web application layer from the database layer. We use network segmentation to isolate LabKey applications from each other. And we use network access control lists and firewalls to limit the traffic to only that which is used by the application. No other traffic is allowed. And then we implemented encryption everywhere, at the operating system layer, at the database layer, at the file layer, and at the transport layer. Once we had that design in place, we implemented that design in automation. So not only did we implement automation to provision and deploy LabKey Cloud instances for their initial deployment, we also implemented configuration management tools to enforce those configurations over time and prevent configuration drift. If you contrast that to what's a traditional manual deployment is, you deploy an instance with a configuration once it's deployed, and then over time you continue to maintain that application. There's no assurance that over time that configuration that you initially deployed is the same a year from now. By using automation and configuration management tooling, you can enforce those configurations over time to ensure that your application is continued and configured in the way that you deployed it initially. One of the advantages of our automation is it's given us the capability of doing blue-green deployments. So a blue-green deployment is essentially, the colors are really meaningless here. It's just a way of identifying the two types of the two instances. So your initial deployment is a blue instance, and then as an update is needed at some future point, we're able to snapshot the data of the blue environment and create a green environment from that, and then transition to that green environment, leaving the blue environment in place in case there's a problem. What this does is it minimizes disruption. By deploying new, we have a fallback plan in case something goes wrong with the green deployment. We can switch back to the blue environment because that environment remains unchanged. It also allows us, the blue-green model allows us to get away from doing patch-in-place solutions. So instead of patching and updating an instance in place, we deploy new instance with the latest updates. That helps reduce the risk associated with an update going wrong, or I'm sure almost everyone has had an experience where, oh, I received an update to my operating system, and then suddenly something stops working and breaks. This helps reduce that challenge. This approach gives us more strategic advantages in security. By using blue-green deployments, we provision new instances versus patch in place, as I mentioned. And what this does is it helps protect clients against advanced persistent threats. So, for example, let's say for some reason, an attacker was able to compromise the blue environment and remain undetected. When we applied and updated the green environment, the blue environment would be discarded. So that helps prevent the risks associated with advanced persistent threats and reduces the security risks associated with that. So essentially, this allows us to help prevent aspects of an attacker retaining a foothold in an organization. Talked a little bit about defense already in some of those aspects. As I mentioned earlier, we consider security as part of our design, where we use firewall and network access control lists to restrict network traffic to only those protocols that are required to run the LabKey application. In addition to this, we've also implemented a web application firewall. This allows us to block known bad actors even before they even reach the instance itself. And then in our compliant cloud offering, we've implemented some additional defense measures such as intrusion detection, log monitoring, and vulnerability scans. Just a few more aspects of our security features. We have a single tenant model where we provide dedicated instances for each client. I mentioned already network segmentation, where we separate our client instances from each other. They're not able to talk to each other. And then we've implemented firewall rules, which are also known as security groups and network access control lists to prevent the traffic, as I mentioned. A little bit more on the web application firewall. Our web application firewall blocks application level attacks such as SQL injection attempts, denial of service attacks, or even poor IP reputation, IP address reputation sources such as known malware attack sites. Just in the last year alone, we've had several zero-day exploits, and those are mitigated by our web application firewall provider installing. They created additional rules to protect against those types of attacks. While that doesn't prevent us from patching those zero-day flaws, but it's yet another layer of defense in our security measures. All right, encryption. So all of our cloud service offerings today incorporate encryption for data in transit and at rest. This includes industry best practices for encrypted communications on both the public and private network communications. And additionally, our cloud provider advantage allows us to utilize database encryption methods, which are much more difficult to implement in on-premise solutions. For those clients that have compliance obligations, our compliant cloud has these additional features. We've implemented intrusion detection and integrity monitoring. This is where we monitor for the instance for signs of intrusion and lack of integrity. For example, are there any new accounts created at the operating system level? Do we see attempts for system files to be modified or changes in the configurations, et cetera? Those security events are captured. We also do vulnerability scanning. This is where we scan the instance for known vulnerabilities and we trigger patch events on that. This is by operating system or other aspects of software that's installed on the instance itself. We capture those security events. We do log aggregation and monitoring. So we consolidate all of our instance logs across all our fleet and monitor them for anomalies. For example, we're able to monitor client instances for login brute force attacks or other types of security events. And I mentioned previously, we use configuration monitoring. So not only do we monitor the client instance, we also monitor our cloud accounts for configuration changes. We use these tools to monitor the configuration to ensure that it meets compliance standards. As I mentioned, all of those types of events are aggregated into our security and incident event monitoring system, or SIEM. And that system not only allows us to consolidate these security events across the complete fleet, but it also allows us to monitor our cloud accounts for authorized or unauthorized access. And last but not least, compliance is not only about features, it's also about ensuring you have the appropriate policies and procedures in place. So at LabKey, we've designed our compliant cloud to meet HIPAA, FISMA moderate, and NIST 853 security requirements. So let's talk a little bit about the managed services that come with LabKey Cloud. One of those is automated backups. So to reduce the risk and data loss, you need to maintain a high number of recovery points. At LabKey, we use a belt and suspenders approach for our backups. So for the belt approach, we leverage our cloud provider capabilities to do instant snapshots, which gives us a point-in-time recovery of the complete instance or service. And then for the suspenders approach, we also take file backups. This gives us a recovery point that allows us to be able to retain those, the history of those over long term, so we can meet compliance purposes. I really won't go into too much detail today about recovery point objective and recovery time objective, just to cover them today. That's pretty much, you can make a presentation out of that by itself. So I won't go into too much detail about that. But in short, the number and frequency of backups helps you reduce your recovery point objective, while automation and speed of restoration helps you reduce your recovery time objective. Like any technical challenge, it comes down to cost. So to shorten the RPO and RTO times, it all comes down to cost. More frequent backups cost more in time and storage cost. So we've taken a balanced approach by providing daily backups. On the recovery side, we gain the benefits of our automation that we talked about previously. And that, coupled with our cloud provider advantages, allows us to shorten the recovery time objective. So what does this mean? Well, it means that LabKey Cloud has a recovery point objective of 24 hours or less, and a recovery time objective of 4 hours or less. All right, so managed service, so our managed updates. Once again, we're able to leverage our cloud provider advantages for this. It helps us reduce risk in providing updates. By regularly performing our blue-green updates, we reduce the risk of operating system updates going wrong, as the time to live between the updates is less. Using this method allows us to keep clients' instances updated, not only with the operating system, but the underlying dependencies such as Java, Tomcat, R, etc. Lastly, we've provided and planned for emergency updates. Certainly, this is an increasing challenge, one we've seen increase over the last few years, but we've planned and built automation tools to allow us to patch components when needed for the inevitable CVE that's coming, that 0 days that appear to keep happening. All right, for monitoring. So we monitor the system for uptime, not just in our data center itself, but geographically as well. So we want to know if an instance is offline, is it offline in our data center, or is that perhaps a regional internet outage? So we monitor for those types of events. We monitor the instance metrics, such as CPU, memory usage, storage, and performance. And we do that so we can ensure client instances are able to perform well for their workloads. For compliant cloud customers, we also monitor important security data points, such as vulnerabilities, as I mentioned before, intrusion detection, workload security, and integrity, as we talked about previously. So all good cloud SaaS services need to undergo security review. So our LabKey Cloud undergoes regular penetration tests by an independent third party to assess our cloud security. Additionally, we recently completed an AWS well-architected review, which ensures that we're meeting AWS's highest standards for deploying cloud services. As we start to wrap up, let's talk briefly about our LabKey Cloud service offerings. We offer 3 tiers in our cloud: starter, professional, and compliant. All of our cloud tiers today benefit from the majority of the features we talked about, such as automated deployment and the managed services. In fact, we use majority of the automation between the 3 tiers is the same automation. So we get the security benefits across all of our tiers. Certainly our LabKey compliant clouds adds additional features for those clients that have additional requirements. The majority of our clients today are in the professional tier, but we also offer the starter and compliant solutions for those clients that have fewer or more complex requirements. So why choose us? Well, 75% of our new customers are choosing LabKey Cloud today. And by 2023, we think that the majority of our clients will be cloud-based. So we recognize that installing and keeping LabKey up to date is challenging. That's why we built this solution for you. Our service offerings combine the skill and knowledge of running LabKey applications in the cloud with the expertise and best practices of running LabKey. You benefit from all of those best practices we talked about. Can you do this yourself in your own organization? Sure. But the real question is, should you? How much time will you and your organization have to invest in developing skills in cloud computing, automation, and deployment frameworks just to get close to the capabilities we offer you today in our cloud? I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, gave you an opportunity to understand a little bit more about LabKey Cloud. I feel strongly that our managed solution can help you take the burden off you and your organization for installing and running and maintaining LabKey in the cloud. This allows you to focus on changing the world and let us manage your cloud instance. All right, that's my presentation. It's time for some questions. All right, question. I've got an existing in-house installation. Can I use LabKey Cloud, or is this just for new customers? Great question. Many of our clients today started as on-premise customers, and we've migrated them to the cloud. So we offer those services helping you get on the cloud. You don't have to just choose LabKey in the beginning. If you've got an existing on-premise solution, we can help you get it into LabKey Cloud. We've done that several times. Okay, another question. Will I be able to get SSH access to my LabKey Cloud instance? Well, it is a managed service. So in general, we don't offer that capability. That's more of a situation where you want to manage it yourself. We feel that our solution provides the ability to handle the aspects of our managed solution, provides the ability to maintain that instance for you. So there's really a lesser need for that. All right, another question. We do a lot of custom development. Can I still perform and develop on a LabKey Cloud hosted instance? Yes. This does, our LabKey Cloud solution does delay your ability slightly to get updates to your LabKey instance itself. So if you're rapidly developing LabKey modules or capabilities, you want to do that against a local instance. And then once you've stabilized your development and ready to push it to a stage instance, for example, you can push those modules to us in multiple different ways, and we can deploy them to your LabKey Cloud instance. Another question: Do I get to test new versions of LabKey before they get deployed to my production server? Yes. So we provide in our professional and compliant tiers. You have two instances that are available to you. You have a stage instance and a production instance. And so you can test new versions of LabKey in your stage instance before they're deployed to your production instance. Got a good question here. I suspect my organization is going to have some resistance to using LabKey Cloud. Do you have any documentation that I can share to help convince them? Yeah. Well, we have several aspects of things on our site. One of the challenges that we frequently get asked is, does this meet my IT security standards for my organization? We frequently fill out the security questionnaires for organizations, so we can certainly help with that on that standpoint. I've got another question. Can I access external data sources such as Benchling or similar? The answer to that is yes. So if the data resource that you're trying to access is available on the internet, like Benchling is available on that, we can configure those, your LabKey instance to communicate with that. All right, we'll do one more question, I got two quick questions here that I can answer. Will my LabKey instance have a valid SSL certificate? Yes, we use AWS certificate services. So all the LabKey instances in the cloud are backed by TLS 1.2 capabilities and valid SSL certificates for that. And what database do you use in LabKey Cloud? We use Postgres.